The Tale of Attacus, the Water-Dancing Rat. A story by Richard Colvin with illustrations by Sally Cheng. Chapter 2. The Confrontation. Every morning, just after first light, Attacus went and sat in plain sight and watched the cygnets train. But only for an hour. After that, he turned his back on the river and went foraging. And when the light faded from the sky, mucky and tired, he'd return home. This was Attacus's routine now. As the days turned to weeks, Mamma Rat felt her son's pain and loss, but knew it was for the best. He will be a decent forager, she thought. What he lacks in a natural gift he makes up for in hard work. Indeed, she'd never known a more hard-working rat. The sadness will pass, she thought. Atticus did indeed learn to enjoy the forage, and was often pleased when his team found something exciting. But even with qualifications for the games looming, Attacus found no joy. Instead, he found a frustration that was becoming harder and harder to bury. He had not spoken to Mamma properly since the Sunday practice, and even though he felt she held the answer to his pain, he couldn't bring himself to forgive her. So, instead, he doubled his efforts to keep himself buried in the forage. This is my life now, he thought. Visible. Then, one morning, as he arrived where the swans trained, he saw all the cygnets but one lazing by the river, with no Barkforth in sight. Attacus hunkered low and snuck closer. "Oi, what are you doing?" one of the lazy cygnets shouted to another. "Disappearing into the river," another replied sarcastically, and all the cygnets but one, the one in the river working on her leap, started honking as if this was the funniest joke they'd ever heard. "Shouldn't you be practicing?" shouted the swan in the lake. "You're the one that can't even do a simple leap, Shay. I'm the only cygnet in my set, so I've already qualified, and I'm the best dancer in this stupid class we're all forced to go to because old Barkforth couldn't even raise one chick." Attacus heard a growl and a voice shout, "You're the worst dancer in this set, the laziest and the most clumsy." It honestly took Attacus a few seconds to realize the voice he heard was his own. Slowly, he stepped out from the undergrowth, and immediately all the cygnets erupted in laughter. "I say, the best dancer, even with this stupid class as judges, couldn't even beat a rat at the dance, and what's more, I think he's too afraid to even try." Attacus knew he had the lazy cygnet in a bind. If he accepted Attacus's challenge, he knew he'd win, and if he refused, he'd be shamed in front of his class. "The rat goes first," the lazy swan said, then gave him a sarcastic theatrical bow. Attacus moved to the edge of the water, its pool almost overwhelming. He looked at his reflection in the river, and he noticed how caked his fur was, his whole face matted in dried mud. As the sun split through the clouds and turned the surface of the river golden, Attacus whispered, "I'm sorry, Mamma." Then, with the easiest of twists, dived in. Almost immediately he felt his muscles complain, the ones he'd used for foraging now redundant and awkward, and the ones he'd neglected, searching for the movements they used to know so well. Then, like slipping into a long-forgotten dream returning to him, his body became the water, and Attacus found his long-lost joy, became the swim, and vanished. After his dance, Attacus exited the water, stood proud on the bank, and stared at his opponent. The lazy swan walked up to him. "You didn't think I'd actually compete against a rat, did you?" Attacus's heart sank, then fear gripped him as a few other swans came towering forward. "Rats don't dance," the swan said. "Stop it," honked Shay, the swan who had been practicing. "Shut it, you. Do you want every animal on the bank to think we want rats in the dance? It's our job to stop him." And with that, the lazy swan's beak flew down and hit Attacus square on the side, launching him easily through the air. All the breath left his body, and he crashed into the riverbank. He tried desperately to pull air into his winded lungs, Another beak hit him, throwing him back the way he came. "Stop it," he heard one of the cygnets shout, but now Attacus cradled his head in his paws and tried to endure the blows as the swans threw him back and forth with ease. "What's going on here?" Barkforth honked, and all the swans lined up and bowed their heads. "Are you okay, little rat?" Barkforth asked. Attacus thought for a moment. "Sore, but nothing's broken," he said truthfully. Barkforth then turned her bill to the cygnets. "How is it that 4 of my class ended up attacking a young rat when they all should be working on their dance?" None spoke. "Forgotten, have you? Well, we will stand here in silence until you remember." Silence. Then more silence. Then the lazy swan spoke. He hates swans. "We were practicing, and he came into the river and pretended to dance in front of us. A rat." Barkforth turned her ancient beak to Attacus. "Is this true?" Attacus looked at the aging swan he'd been secretly learning from since he was a cub, but until this moment had never spoken to. "They saw me disappear," Attacus said plainly. "They saw my world become water and movement." Barkforth could not hide her puzzled expression. "Where did you hear those words?" she asked. "He's been spying on us." "Quiet," Barkforth snapped. "Hear them?" Attacus, confused by the question. "Time to go home, little rat," Barkforth said gently. "The rat's telling the truth." Shay, the swan who had been practicing, spoke up. "He danced. He did. And it was good." Barkforth looked at Shay, and then at the cygnets, now hanging their heads in shame, then again at Attacus. "What's your name, little rat?" "I am Attacus of the riverbank rats, and you are Barkforth, the greatest water dancer that ever lived." "Can you show me?" Barkforth asked. And sore, bruised, and tired, Attacus went once again to the water, gave the lazy swans a stare, then dived again in search of his joy. After, Attacus, Barkforth, and the cygnet stood in silence again. Barkforth sat by the water's edge for what seemed to the little rat an eternity. She finally turned to Attacus. "You clearly have a gift for the water, little rat. But you are just that, a rat. There is no place for you here. It's time for us all to go home." Barkforth turned to leave, and as her cygnets fell in line behind her, Attacus's despair forced his eyes shut tight, and his little body began to shake. "I'm Shay." Attacus opened his eyes and looked straight into the face of the swan who'd spoken up for him. Shay had stayed behind. "Thank you, Attacus," she said. "Your dance was wonderful, Attacus." "It's tradition to thank your fellow dancers." She bowed her long, graceful neck, and after a brief pause turned to go. "Shay," Attacus said. Shay turned back, and Attacus bowed his furry neck. "Shay, your left flipper. I know, I'm trying to keep it up when I jump." "No," Attacus said. "You're lifting it before you break surface. It's why you're off balance." Shay didn't move, and Attacus didn't know if he'd said something rude, but he thought it would be better to finish. "Wait till your body lifts off the water, then pull both into your body. Your takeoff will be more balanced, which will reduce your splash when you land." "I'll try that. Thank you for sharing your gift, Attacus." Shay jogged off to catch up with the team. Attacus watched the swans until they were out of sight. He looked into the river again and saw all the mud had been washed away from his fur. "I'm done with this," Attacus thought. Then he turned his bruised body away from the river and went home.